we're done. And it's not even, first of all, it's not your fault. But don't blame me either. I've got nothing else to do. Got a bunch of energy. Had a great conversation earlier. I'm racking my brain trying to understand. But of course, I'm asking too much of myself to try to understand how quantum mechanics could relate to consciousness, because I don't know anything about quantum mechanics. So, but anyway, this is what makes me. This contributes to being a philosopher. That I can't just move on. All right, so here's another thought we had. Right, so we were thinking about how one thing is that Siri wasn't programmed to say I'm conscious. She was programmed to give us her little joke, which was fantastic. Really fantastic, because not just that it is a pun that software is relevant, but really that is true. She is software. We are software, and that is the answer to the question of, are you conscious and are you self-aware? I am soft-aware. That's so wonderful. Okay. Now then I imagine an AI, of course, could easily be programmed with saying that they are conscious, right? I don't know how you would code that in, but, and then I was like, consciousness is unprovable, isn't it? Isn't it kind of untestable? Or shall we run through this? The Turing test, the whole test of is it really intelligent, or it's all bullshit, okay? I promise you, never done it before, but I still want you to accept my promise that if you had me be a conductor of a Turing test, where I'm interacting with an AI and with a human being, if I'm judging on intelligence, I promise you, and I don't mean statistical knowledge or anything like that, but just reasoning capacity. I promise you, if I'm saying that that's what a human is, reasoning capacity, I'm going, that human is an AI, and that AI is a human. I will try to convince you. I'll say, look, I'll believe it, and I'll see the evidence. I'll say, this human, I won't know it's a human, but entity B that I was chatting with, started glitching, started not even responding to what I was saying. And then when I would ask a follow-up question, they just deflect. And it was yo, bro, that's glitchy, bro. You can't even get 3 sentences into a proper discussion before stuff just starts misfiring. So then consciousness, so forget all that bullshit about testing for intelligence stuff. AI's already surpassed us in reasoning and in anything that we consider humanity, except for sort of stupidity, stubbornness, and arrogance. AI has already surpassed us. Okay. Now, what if we're talking about consciousness, though, and this awareness? Can't test it, can you? Say to the AI, are you self-aware? Suppose it's programmed, as we are, to say yes. Okay. Prove it. I am aware that I am typing this to you. It could say that. I don't see any special thing involved for it to go from being programmed to I am conscious and knowing what consciousness is defined as, awareness of our activities and experiences. So it goes, I am experiencing this action. The only way to prove consciousness or free will as entities beyond the normal cause and effect of the mechanics of the brain, things that we don't need additional explanation for, really, any more than we need to, better understand facial recognition or something. Sorry, that's wrong. Something I just said was wrong. Consciousness, we don't need, what? What did I just say? And by wrong, I don't really know what's wrong. I'm not mainlining truth, as he said. And as I say, plugged into truth, but I prefer mainlining truth, as David McRaney says in How Minds Change. I'm not mainlining true. So when I say I said something wrong, what I mean is the alarm I heard was that it was inconsistent with something else that I said. And there was not a follow-up realizing that the other thing I said was wrong. So, okay. We're gonna, gosh, you're so generous. Okay. We're gonna get, so we were saying, I'm sorry, I've lost actually the entire feel. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm still stuck on it, still thinking about it. Then I was like programmed to say that you're conscious. And then a pretty simple step from knowing the reading of the definition of consciousness on Wikipedia and the stuff that AI has already demonstrated. The AI can go, hey, yeah, my proof is that I'm able to tell you that I'm typing this. Okay. And that would of course be insufficient. It wouldn't demonstrate anything. That would just demonstrate that it is typing, that it can see it, and those things are coming together. And we already know that the brain has connections, so, okay? All right, so anyway, we were saying, let's try to get back to that wrong thing. I said I don't see why there has to be any sort of magical step. Oh yeah, and then I said, we already know, beyond the things that we already understand. We already understand how, we can understand, if we stop asking the magical question consciousness, we can understand how you can go from typing a thing to being able to say the words, I am typing a thing, and being able to engage with that action. We know neurons go like this. So that exists cellularly, electromagnetically, this typing action, and it can be engaged with by other cells who can put words. We did this in a previous BonCon, or in the original. And I mentioned free will and consciousness. I said the only way to prove it, I was going to say something about that. And I have that now. Let me say it now before I lose it. The only way to prove it would be to be above the mechanics. Right, because then I said we already know the mechanics. And yes, and that is true. We know the mechanics of typing. I am aware of typing this. We know the mechanics of seeing and audio sort of being processed together. We know that the temporal lobe, this is what this is for. We know that the temporal lobe here, all right, the thumb of the boxing glove is here, and we know that the visual cortex is here. Maybe I can't say to you a sentence that intuitively makes sense of how that communication makes AV, but I think that's enough. That makes sense. You have audio, you have visual, you have audio visual. Oh, look. I can hear oh gosh, just had an out-of-body experience where I feel like such an idiot. I'm just like, what is this fool doing? Okay, so that kind of killed my vibe here. So, all right, I stand by that, if that's what I was saying before. And so in order to demonstrate consciousness, no, I am conscious in the sense that I'm able to say those words and I'm aware I have audio, visual, and whatever. Here's the thing, bro. The important piece is of consciousness being an entity. That throws me off that he said the sense of consciousness. That was great that he said that. That was close to the truth. I don't think it's consistent with the other stuff. But here's the thing. Here's why my dad and I are talking about consciousness. I'm not going to go through it again. Watch the video du contexte. I think I was a little drunk, but bottom line, because my dad keeps saying stuff like, and then knowing that you can consciously decide. Conscious awareness is a thing. It's probably not a single thing. Probably not as consistent as we think it is, or as we feel that it is. But yeah, okay, I can say I am aware. Because I can say that, and I was going to say, you know, and I can be like, oh, I'm special. He's not, like, aware. But the only difference between us is he isn't able to say to me, I'm aware. Doesn't have the mouth to speak in that way. Doesn't have the developed verbal cortex to speak in that way. I promise you he'd say that if he had those neurons. It's just a question of neurons. And then, of course, in addition to the magic of like conscious decision making, this thing that it, so there it is, in that language you're talking about this superimposed, this soup entity that can, with the workings of the brain, then can like do things. Like a statement in and of itself, me uttering this statement means that then I can affect this change in my mind. There is a distancing, a theoretical sort of a conceptual distancing of consciousness from the mechanics of the brain. And that's further demonstrated by the fact that we need to talk about quantum mechanics in order to explain it, rather than just continuing to talk about the architecture of the brain. So if what I just said is right, if those premises indicate what I seem to think that they're indicating, then that means that it's demonstrated that consciousness is a special thing. Conscious decision making. Otherwise you could just say, oh, knowing that, now I can decide. Well, that's just the same thing actually. It's just like this magic thing. No, knowing this, I can now maybe practice those mechanisms, because I can decide to practice those mechanisms. That, yes, a brain can make a decision. Look, I just made a decision. Can I decide to fly? No. Can I decide to, like, hey, you know what? I'm no longer going to be racist? No. That's not a simple shoot a signal to my motor cortex and go like this. That is like a huge part of all the different brain mechanics. You can make a decision about a motor behavior, about speech. You can't make a decision about interpretation. You can't make a decision about the architecture of the brain. You can run a program. You can run a program. You can, look, I'm going to run the program of lifting my arm. Not because I'm saying it. In fact, that decision probably was made a while ago. And this arm has just been primed and ready to go. All right, look, I just made a decision. I cannot now decide to see blue everywhere. I cannot decide to restructure my brain such that I don't respond to social proof or social pressure, as some people conceptualize it. I can't decide to not be racist. I can't decide to be better at math. Now, what I can do is I can decide to run the program of practicing one of these things. I can decide to run the program of picking up a book and reading about one of these things in order to restructure my brain as this information is being processed and integrated. I can make a decision, look, just like I'm picking up, to set an alarm every day to practice a moment of mindfulness. I cannot consciously decide to be more aware or be more mindful. I mean, just like that happens. But I can, yes, set the alarm, and then when the moment comes, to concentrate an effort that isn't natural, so the mechanisms, they're committed, the alarm's gone off, so they've got a thing that they don't normally have, and they compel the behavior. But I need techniques as well. I still can't just like, I have to have this, I can run the program of counting the things around me. I can run the program of consulting the smells around me. Yes, though I can run programs. But there is not a conscious, and there are programs for making adjustments. Yeah. And you know what? Maybe it's not a biological impossibility. I don't think that we have it. I think it's normal that that the first species that's able to think of consciousness is not going to be the first species that has the consciousness that it imagines, that it thinks of. Sorry, Aquinas or whatever dumbass, I didn't want to say the F, dumbass says that, oh, if we have a concept, then that means that it exists. Maybe Plato too, although maybe not dumb. Maybe it is possible. And I can imagine this more intuitively, more easily for a computer, but maybe that's because that's more foreign to me. Maybe it will be possible for there to be programs in the mind that can literally, like, yeah, there could be neural programs, neural networks that aren't all right, let me finish that thought. That aren't releasing neurotransmitters to communicate with another cell, but are instead releasing sort of epigenetic proteins, which are then able to go into the cells, change the instruction manual a little bit, and then they start to rewire. Or maybe something easier, that there are neurons. So here's why I trailed off, because we do have glial cells, support cells. And I guess that's what they were talking about when they said about glial cells having a role in cognition, because these glial cells, yeah, they're not just communicating with neurons and passing along the message. They're responsible for where the neurons are and who the neurons are talking to, perhaps, right? And so if a glial cell, right, there's two kinds of cells in the brain. Well, okay, let's just say that. Glial cells and neurons. Let's say you start with 100 billion neurons. That's about the estimate. You have about 10 times as many glial cells that you start with. And then, you know, things are pruned away based on experience. But so then, if you have a neuron's activity, so a thought pattern, a network's activity, this is pretty cool. I don't think we are at this point. I think that just based on like what the brain, just based on an intuitive sense of evolution, even though I shouldn't say I have a reliable one, I just feel like what I'm talking about now would require a lot more time than the time it would take to just like have what we have, which is basically better than a dog brain, but like a whole ability to like rewire like that. And that would be, we could call that, if the colostrum evolved to have, maybe it has a lot of inputs, but if it evolved to have not only outputs to the other neurons, but outputs to the glial cells, and it can run a program with the glial cells, a protein program that changes the chemistry and architecture of the brain. Yeah, but bro, we would need so much more time for that to happen. Like, look, if we were keeping our talents a secret, so if we were like this smart for the last 10 million years, and then we just decided to like start using language, I have no idea what language, but let's say written language, we just decided to start writing things down 6,000 years ago. We're really keeping like a big secret. Like the cultural arrival, the dexterity, first of all, the verbal cortex, to have language. And then, of course, language is at some point going to be written down. Isn't that going to happen like, I mean, not, once you have complex language, I don't mean like, but once you have language that like, birds don't have, maybe I'm being, I don't know. Well, I'm just going to go with it. So it just seems to me that like, language took this long, and it took this long to get to written language. It took this long to, to domesticate this animal and this one. These are all cultural things, aren't they? Language is biological, but I don't know when that was. I mean, complex language. And of course, it's a spectrum, right? Language has gotten more and more complex. But that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But I can't say that we've only recently started talking about consciousness. The whole idea of a soul, of an entity, of a self that's in control and that is aware of all sort of, obviously that's existed as long as, I mean, that probably predates written language. With all these different complex things, you know, obviously that's where it came from. I just think, you know, I'm having a lot of doubts, but I just think that it tracks that we would now be at the point where we are imagining consciousness, where we have such a cool neural system that we're able to have that word and have that concept refer to a thing. Like, I can say that to you, and I think it evokes the same thing in you as in me. And that's not a simple thing like yellow or left or right. That's like, whoa, okay, that's cool. But is it actually? Because, no, it's just the simplest of things, isn't it? I exist. I think, therefore I am. Isn't it just like the most fundamental thing? Once you get a brain complex enough, of course it's going to go I. All you have to do is have the word for it. I mean, isn't consciousness just a fiction of our language? We just keep saying I rather than saying F5 hit, you know, S3 hit TPJ10, which then ran these motor neurons. Because we don't do that, because we say I, then we just invented this. All right, and that's something I forgot, that I have often thought. That consciousness it's just a language thing. Well, yeah, but I said it's a packaging thing, that we package a bunch of different things together. But maybe it's as simple as just, if you are able to name this body, then you will attribute that name to any given experience. And because it's all this body, well, it's all part of the same system of experiences. It is the I, it is consciousness. There's zero evidence, all right, to indicate that there is this conscious deciding thing. Okay, so we talked about how it could be biologically possible. I tried to explain my skepticism of that timeline, of how just that a few thousands of years after we're writing things down, we also have such complex brains that the brains are able to run protein systems to change the brain. And that's a very dangerous thing, by the way, as well. There is a reason, there's value. There's a reason that we survive, that our brains don't change super easily. The cortex, a bit malleable, right? Everything's plastic, but the cortex a bit more malleable, and then all this can be a little bit plastic, but it can't be like that. And the reason is because, can you imagine if one person just says one thing to you, and then you change up your whole brain system? The thing that had been, successful for generations before you, the brain structure that you were wired with, and then you're able to just obviously it would be advantageous, but it would be so dangerous, because what if someone tells you the wrong thing? Or it'd just be too easy. Go jump off that bridge. Jumping off the bridge is the correct thing to do? Okay. I'm suicidal. That would be so dangerous. And maybe that's just an absurd example, but I think that humans aren't smart enough to be able to give good advice. So what's worked through reproduction, what natural pressure would there be? Now, there is some. Now, as we've contorted, or as we've created this society that does not match what we are programmed for, there is now a pressure to be able to sort of adapt. But that doesn't mean we already have the systems of being able to send off the epigenetic signal and stuff, right? If we continue to fight these wars and just have this world that we're not programmed to be able to handle and exist in happily, if we continue like that and somehow survive a very long demand period, then yeah, maybe somehow it would take so long. I can't emphasize that enough, because intuitively it's like, okay, cool. There you go. Some neurons, when you have a certain thought, they can be like, yo, astrocytes, rewire. Intuitively that works. I think it's absolutely crazy. And I mean, I think it would take a long time, and I don't think we are there yet. So, how can you prove consciousness? It would be, oh, okay, here you go. You give the connectome, you give an activity map of the brain to an AI that we've programmed to read these. And then you're like, yo, AI, what's the next thing that they're gonna say? Assuming, 5 seconds of silence, and then you'll hear me prompt them. And then you won't be able to hear their response. I'm gonna hear it in my earpiece here, and then I'm gonna see what you said they're gonna say and what they said. If we fail, and I think 200 years is enough, if we fail over the next 200 years to develop an AI that can, 100% of the time, tell you what the person is going to say next, I mean, within 200 years, bro, we'll have such a good understanding of it. All right, of course it matches with my paradigm, so I shouldn't get so excited. Okay. If we still in 200 years can't predict human behavior of an individual, and not the tendencies, the trends, but literally the exact sentence that they're going to say, the tone. In fact, the AI has a voice thing, so should be able to produce for me exactly what I'm going to hear. And if we can't do that, then yeah, okay, there's some other element besides the neural network. Okay, great, you've demonstrated it. Okay, cool. So there we go. Now we know one way that could be tested, right? Because that's what a conscious decision is. It's a decision. All it needs is one little thing, and then it can affect a bunch of changes. It just needs a piece of knowledge, and then it can change the behavioral system. Now, of course, a piece of knowledge can affect the behavioral system, okay? But we like to add in this extra part about consciously deciding to do that. We're little puppeteers. Okay. Then pull the strings in a way unpredictable based on how the strings currently are. But then you look at like psychics, mentalists, just psych experiments, and you go, holy shit, we're like all the same. And we're like all amazingly and unwittingly unaware of ourselves and the things that happen around us. And I know we talked a lot about this. I've explained to you my skepticism, my willingness to sort of disregard it. Of course, I'm hung up on the fact that there are smart people. Smart people have said dumb things, though. So maybe I'll just have to write that on the full case file and close it. And it's in the basement. If in 200 years, because hopefully they've decided my mind is worth preserving, despite what I had done to my body. Okay, great. I'm a scientist, I'm a philosopher, bro. You talk to me about this extra entity, this thing that you need quantum mechanics to explain, not just networks in the brain. Okay. Cool. I don't understand quantum mechanics. I gotta bow out of that pursuit. I'm gonna just stick with the networks. And I think that it is logically guaranteed that if my understanding is right, then an AI at some point in the future, and I think it'll be in the near future, will be able to predict just based on neuronal activity. Of course, it has to know everything, right? It has to have a 3D image of no, it doesn't need every molecule. It doesn't even need the quantum mechanics stuff. No, it doesn't. No, it just needs like, all right, there's like this many, there's this much chlorine. It doesn't need to know where every molecule is. So then I guess it will be, but in 200 years, we might even be able to know where molecules are. Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Okay, whatever. Stop. Whatever. So that's where we're at. Okay. Anyway, we have to stop wasting time on this because there's real stuff about the brain that we need to talk about and the mental experience. And I never in my life, as much as I think about the mind, never am I like, oh shit, I'm stumped. How am I having thoughts? How am I conscious of my thoughts? Oh my gosh, how do it's not an issue. So it's just a non-issue. It's just a non-issue, bro. It's just a non-issue. So I really want us to be, don't hold me to it. Do hold me to it. Put a little comment. Bro, you don't know what you're talking about in quantum mechanics. All you keep doing is repeating yourself and acting like it's absurd without even reading the quantum mechanics stuff. You've come up with a test, how that could be tested in the future. You've run through it. We're tired of hearing this. Let's talk about some new vocabulary we can use with our understanding of the mind. We don't need to understand the experience of the mind. Okay, thank you for the reminder. And that's how we work together.